Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything. Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. Today, we're reading chapter 25, section 3. Yesterday, in section 2, we talked about the partitioning of Africa amongst the European nations in the 1884 Berlin Conference. That, to me, is evidence that the Europeans are not progressive if we're going to call the United States racist for having slaves up until the Civil War. The Europeans partitioned Africa after the Civil War and just said, this is ours. This is ours. We own these large swaths of land. That is not progressive. I am John Michael. I am a CEO, founder, CFO, and social media manager of Context is Everything Media Network. And as a social media manager, I ask, please subscribe. Please like. The little blurb I just did there is a hint of what I will talk about, which is just the things off the top of my head. And I think they're kind of logically based, but they're all based off of the context found within this textbook. And eventually, when I finish the textbook, which I'm more than 2/3 of the way through, I will do more and talk about other things. That's it. Please listen. Please subscribe. Please put this on for your dog while you're away. Great company for dogs. Number 1 in canine viewership. Very good. Like, subscribe. Thank you. European Challenges to the Muslim World, Chapter 25, Section 3. Thank you. Setting the scene. Europe is a molehill, said Napoleon Bonaparte in 1797. He felt it offered too few chances for glory. We must go to the east, he declared. All great glory has been acquired here. In 1798, he put his thoughts into action by invading Egypt, a province of the Ottoman Empire. Napoleon's Egyptian campaign highlighted Ottoman decline and opened up a new era of European contact with the Muslim world. In early 1800s, European countries were just nibbling at the edges of the Muslim world. Before long, they would strike at its heartland. Stresses of the Muslim world. New heading, hence the glasses. Stresses in the Muslim world. The Muslim world extended from Western Africa to Southern Asia. In the 1500s, 3 giant Muslim empires ruled much of this world. The Mughals in India, the Ottomans in the Middle East, and the Safavids in Iran. Empires in decline. By the 1700s, all 3 Muslim empires we just mentioned were in decline. The decay they had many causes. Central governments had lost control over powerful groups such as landowning nobles, military elites, and urban craft guilds. Corruption was widespread. In some places, Muslim scholars and religious leaders were allied with the state. In other areas, they helped to stir discontent against the government. Islamic reform movement. In the 1700s and early 1800s, reform movements sprang up across the Muslim world. Most stressed religious piety and strict rules of behavior. The Wahhabi, W-A-H-H-A-B-I, the Wahhabi movement in Arabia, for example, rejected the schools of theology and law that had emerged in the Ottoman Empire. In their place, they wanted to recapture the purity and simplicity of Muhammad's original teachings. An Arab prince led the Wahhabis against the Ottoman rule. An Arab prince led the Wahhabis against Ottoman rule. Although the revolt was crushed, the Wahhabi movement survived. Its teachings are influential in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia today. Is that good? I don't think that Saudi Arabia is very good. Are they good? In the comments below, please leave in a comment, is Saudi Arabia good? Because I don't know much about it, but I think they're not. I could be wrong. Islamic revivals rose in Africa too. As you have read, Usman Dan Fodio led the struggle to reform Muslim practices. In the Sudan, south of Egypt, Muhammad Ahmad announced that he was the Mahdi, M-A-H-D-I, or long-awaited savior of the faith. In the 1880s, the Mahdi and his followers fiercely resisted British expansion into the region, and rightly so. European imperialism. In addition to internal decay and stress, the old Muslim empires faced Western imperialism. Through diplomacy and military threats, European powers won treaties giving them favorable trading terms. They then demanded special rights for Europeans residing in Muslim lands. At times, European powers protected those rights by intervening in local affairs. Sometimes they took over an entire region. Problems of the Ottoman Empire. New heading. At its height, the Ottoman Empire had extended across the Middle East, North Africa, and southern Europe. By the early 1800s, however, it faced serious challenges. Ambitious pashas, P-A-S-H-A-S, or provincial rulers, had increased their power. Economic problems and corruption had added to Ottoman decay. Nationalist revolts. As ideas of nationalism spread from Western Europe, internal revolts subject peoples in Eastern Europe, Middle East, and North Africa threatened to break away. In the Balkans, Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, and Romanians gained their independence. Revolts against Ottoman rule also erupted in Arabia, Lebanon, and Armenia. The Ottomans suppressed these uprisings, but another valuable territory, Egypt, slipped out of their control. European pressures. European states sought to benefit from slow crumbling of the Ottoman Empire. After seizing Algeria in the 1830s, France hoped to gain more Ottoman territories. Russia schemed to gain control of Bosporus and Dardanelles, Dardanelles. Control of these straits would give the Russians across the Mediterranean. Controls of these straits. Where am I? Control of these straits would give the Russians across access to the Mediterranean Sea. Britain tried to thwart Russia's ambitions, which it saw as a threat to its own power in the Mediterranean and beyond to India. And in 1898, the new German Empire jumped on the bandwagon, hoping to increase its influence in the region by building Berlin to Baghdad highway. Berlin to Baghdad highway. Efforts to Westernize. Since the late 1700s, several Ottoman rulers had seen the need for reform and looked to the West for ideas. They reorganized the bureaucracy and system of tax collection. They built railroads, improved education, and hired European officers to train a modern military. Young men were sent to the West to study the new science and technology. Many returned home with Western ideas about democracy and equality. The reforms also brought better medical care and revitalized farming. These improvements, however, were a mixed blessing. Better living conditions resulted in a population explosion. The growing population increased. Competition for best land increased, which led to unrest. Many adopted Western ideas about government, also increased tension. Many officials objected to the changes that were inspired by the foreign culture. For their part, repressive sultans rejected reform and tried to rebuild the autocratic power enjoyed by their earlier rulers. Young Turks. Isn't that the name of a podcast that isn't very balanced? Young Turks. Isn't that the name of a podcast that isn't very balanced? That is the name of a podcast that isn't very balanced, isn't it? Young Turks. In the 1890s, a group of liberals formed a movement called the Young Turks. They insisted that reform was the only way to save the empire. In 1908, the Young Turks overthrew the Sultan. Before they could achieve their planned reforms, however, the Ottoman Empire was plunged into war. World War I in 1914. Massacre of Armenians. Traditionally, the Ottomans had let minority nationalities live in their own communities and practice their own religions. By the 1890s, however, nationalism was ignited to new tensions, especially between Turkish nationalists and minority people who sought their own states. These tensions triggered the brutal genocide of Armenians, a Christian people concentrated in the eastern mountains of the empire. Genocide is a deliberate attempt to destroy an entire religious or ethnic group. The Muslim Turks trusted in the Christian Armenians and accused them of supporting Russian plans against the Ottoman Empire. When Armenians protested repressive Ottoman policies, the Sultan had tens of thousands of them slaughtered. Over the next 25 years, 1 million more Armenians in the Ottoman Empire were killed. Didn't know about that. That's not good. Egypt seeks to modernize. New heading. Egypt in 1800 was a semi-independent province of the Ottoman Empire. In the early 1800s, it made great strides towards reform. Its success was due to Muhammad Ali, not the boxer, who was appointed governor of Egypt in 1805. I believe Muhammad Ali was born in the 40s? 1940s, that is. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is sometimes called the father of modern Egypt. To strengthen Egypt, he introduced a number of political and economic reforms. He improved tax collection, reorganized land-holding systems, and backed large irrigation projects to increase farm output. By expanding cotton production and encouraging the development of local industry, he increased Egyptian participation in world trade. Muhammad Ali also brought Western military experts to Egypt to help him build a well-trained modern army. He conquered the neighboring lands of Arabia, Syria, and Sudan. Before he died in 1849, he had set Egypt on the road to becoming a major Middle Eastern power. The Suez Canal. The Suez Canal. the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal. Muhammad Ali's successor lacked his skills, and Egypt increasingly under foreign control. In 1859, a French entrepreneur, Ferdinand de Lessier, organized a company called to build the Suez Canal. This 100-mile waterway links the Mediterranean and Red Sea. Here's a map. See the little stitch over here? That's the Suez Canal, and that is what it is. It connects the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. I'm sure that's very useful to trade in many ways for many reasons. So this 100-mile waterway links the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. Europeans hailed its opening in 1869 because it greatly shortened the sea route from Europe to South and East Asia. To Britain especially, the canal was a lifeline to India. In 1875, the ruler of Egypt was unable to repay loans he had contracted for the canal and other modernization projects. To pay this debt, he was forced to sell his shares in the canal. The British Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, quickly bought these shares, giving Britain a controlling interest in the canal. A British protectorate. When Egypt nationalists revolted against the foreign influence in 1882, Britain made Egypt a protectorate. In theory, the governor of Egypt was still an official of the Ottoman government. In fact, he followed policies dictated by Britain. Under British influence, Egypt continued to modernize. At the same time, however, nationalist discontent simmered and flared into protests and riots well into the next century. Iran and other European powers. And final section. And thank you. If you're still here, my name is John Michael. This is The Context is Everything Media Network Studio B. Please subscribe. Please like. If you've made it this far, come on, it's free. Why not? Just do it. Also, put this on for your dog while you're away. Playlist. Just let it run. Your dog will thank you later. Here's a pat on the head for the little pup. Good boy or girl. Like the Ottoman Empire, Iran faced major challenges in the 1800s. Like Qatar. What? Okay, never mind. Like the Ottoman Empire, Iran faced major challenges in the 1880s. The Qajar Shahs, who ruled Iran from 1794 to 1925, exercised absolute power like the Safavids before them. Still, they did take steps to introduce reform. The government improved finances, sponsored the building of telegraph lines and railroads, and even experimented with a liberal constitution. Reform, however, did not save Iran from Western imperialism. Both Russia and Britain battled for influence in the area. Russia wanted to protect its southern frontier and expand into Central Asia. Britain was concerned about protecting its interests in India. For a time, each nation set up its own sphere of influence in Iran. Russia operated in the north and Britain in the south. The discovery of oil in the early 1900s heightened the foreign interest in the region. Both Russians and British, intrigued for control of Iranian oil fields. The two powers persuaded the Iranian government to grant them concessions or special economic rights given to foreign powers. To protect their interests, they sent troops to Iran. Iranian nationalists were outraged. The nationalists included two very different groups. Some Iranians, especially the urban middle class, wanted to move swiftly to adopt Western ways. Others, led by Muslim religious leaders, condemned the Iranian government and Western influencers. My name is John Michael. This is the Context is Everything Media Network. Pat on the head for the dog. I hope you have a wonderful day. #1 in canine viewership. Thank you. God bless. Enjoy the weather. Bye-bye.